Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, crooners. Get those vocal cords warmed up because there's only about 2 minutes before our sing-along session kicks in. Yes, it's time for a little sing-along at Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, on the playlist today, we've got a story about a wetsuit that may save your life in the event of a shark bite. For those who love a window seat on a plane, we've got some good news. It's not quite Wonder Woman's invisible jet, but everyone gets a window seat. We'll explain how. And wearable tech is no longer just for the super sporty and health conscious. Today, we're taking note of the vital signs of livestock, and with very good reason. But more of that later. First, welcome to the microphone, the man with the golden tonsils and the smooth lyrical stylings. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
Me, just warming up here. Now, it's interesting. I've been out in the last week doing a charity bicycle ride, which doesn't sound like a lot of fun when you do about 800 kilometres in a week.
Yeah, that's like a fun run that goes for like 22 kilometres or something like that. That's not a fun run.
The fun definitely is taken out of it, but it's a good event to raise money, a good event if you like your cycling. But what I do want to talk about from a technology perspective is the idea of how we fundraise. Now, there are so many different ways to fundraise, but a good old-fashioned model has been, let's put a dinner on. How about we organise tickets where we make a little money on the ticket, but you've got to have the auction, the dreaded auction where we're sitting around at dinner going, we feel like we're contributing here, James. We've bought a ticket and we're having a lovely time talking to each other, and the auctioneer comes up.
Now we really have to dig deep into our pockets. Yeah.
Either dig deep or stay perfectly still.
Don't move.
Don't say a word. Don't even cough, because that's.
But when
just
everyone does that, the auctioneer's got to work particularly hard and make people feel particularly bad about not contributing.
And maybe I'm getting a bit of auction dinner function fatigue.
Yeah, right.
Not sure if it's a technical medical term yet, but it may well be, because I get to those and I go, I was having a really good chat to James at my table, and now I've got to stop and be really quiet. It's rude if I keep talking, besides the fact that I might buy something I don't want. I've got to just sit there, and I just feel like it loses momentum in a night.
For sure.
And then if you haven't got a big enough crowd, or if they haven't got great items to auction, the auctioneer, as you said before, has to really work hard to drag it out of the crowd and try and do it. And auctioneers can be very clever and funny what they're doing, but it just feels like that's not my idea of entertainment for the evening. Yeah. So many years ago, I'm going way back to 2013, I came up with a concept. Well, it wasn't my original concept. I came across a concept where you could just do an online auction, not that big a deal, but it was specifically focused on online auctions at a dinner. And I went, that's a better idea. So we can do something with that. We can have online auction, maybe we can have a screen up or something, and then we can just let people do their bidding. Fantastic. So that was in 2013. I gave it a go, and it was an absolute complete flop. It was hopeless. It was terrible. But what I found as I considered the error of my ways in that particular one was that people weren't comfortable about putting their credit card into some online auction site to go and bid. And then if you didn't do that, then it still made it clumsy, because I've done physical auctions where afterwards I'm still chasing days, weeks later. James, you said you'd pay $50 for that. Oh, no, that wasn't a great idea, was it? I'm not sure if I really want that. So it was a continual chase up afterwards to get money out of people. So they weren't comfortable. I went, well, I thought that was a good idea. I'll can that. I'll forget it. It was probably 6 years later, and I was doing another function, another event I was organising, and I went, I'm going to give that idea a go again, because I think it's got some legs, and it worked better. And then we had this little COVID thing that came along, which meant that everyone got the idea of putting their details online. They were, okay, credit card,
all of a sudden,
whatever.
It all went out the window, didn't it?
It did. So on this particular event, we had this particular idea, and it's fair to say that the companies that will allow you to do this have progressed a fair way now. And so this one we had was just a fairly simple concept. We only had a relatively small dinner. Maybe we had the riders themselves and then another 40 people from the local community. So not a huge dinner by any stretch of the imagination. And they'd managed to get some items donated. So we ended up with about, say, 20 items that were there ready to buy, to auction. And then we organised a few TVs for the room, and on those TVs it's scrolling over continually. I can say, James has just bid for that thing there for $150. Right, I'll outbid James. I'll show him, and I'll go on my phone and bid. And everyone's registering a QR code on the tables because everyone knows what to do with a QR code now.
Yeah.
You see a QR code, you must scan it. It's compulsory. I don't know what it does, but I'm going to scan that QR code. So suddenly it's at the point now where you can have a great night. We had these great guest speakers. We didn't have to interrupt them with an auctioneer coming and boring everyone and trying to drag money out of people. And people were pretty excited about it. And then a couple of times during the night, you just say, look at that. We're up to $10,000. It'd be great to get to $11,000. And you'll see a few more bids come in. And when there's really interesting guest speakers, you see the bids slow down. And then there's people eating dinner and having their dessert, and you see the bids start to go up because there's a bit more activity going. So it seems to be at the point now where it works really well. So on this particular one, we earned or raised about $16,000 out of just people sitting around with a couple of screens around with not a lot of items. But then, of course, you could add some on. So the local mayor was there at the table, and I said, do you reckon you'd be happy to have dinner with a couple of residents if they paid a bit of money for it? He said, yeah, sure thing. So I took a photo of him and put it on the online site. A few bids started coming through. In the end, we had someone pay $1,500 to have dinner with the local mayor. So you can just start to get the stage where you can do things.
I wonder if you're going to regret that.
Well, maybe, because someone might want their
All of a sudden he becomes a sounding board. And
all it takes is $1.5 grand to get my DA approved. Is that it? Is that how easy it is? So I just love the idea of the technology. And I had a couple of people who were admittedly slightly older. They said, I don't love this idea, Matthew. I want to put my hand up and pay some money. I said, well, I get that.
You're in a minority now. But I guess the people who really need to do that, they're going to become fewer and further between. Sadly.
I think so.
But just this acceptance of this is the way we do things now.
Yeah, that's right. And I think we'll get more and more of that. And if I was doing it again, the secret, I think, is just more TVs around the room. If you have a couple of TVs, people keep an eye on. But if you have TVs almost in every direction you look that are slowly ticking over, and you've got the different items, and you can see when you're outbid and who's bidding for something, and those you keep getting reminders, if you like, in your face. But you're not having to interrupt the main event, which is someone talking or just conversing with people on the table. Yeah. It's all very easy. So I love where we are going with some of that technology. So absolutely every function I would organise in the future, I would try and do that. You've got to convince a committee that it's a good idea, because sometimes the auctioneer loves the actual event because they get to stand up in front of people and be an auctioneer, which is great fun if you're an auctioneer. So, but I do like the idea that we are accepting that technology at a much higher level.
Very good. All right, now it's time to interrupt this chit-chat with some news from the tech world. Now, cyber attacks have become so commonplace now that they hardly even make the news these days. But for beer connoisseurs, or beer sommeliers, let's call them that, big news out of Japan is that Asahi beer production has ground to a halt due to a recent ransomware attack. Now, Matt, this is big news in Japan, but it's enormous news in the bourgeois, bohemian pubs and clubs of North Sydney.
Yes, it is true there too. I was thinking more Japan, but I wasn't thinking of Sydney. So Asahi, I've got that pronunciation right, haven't I? I've actually,
Asahi, that's how I pronounce it, if right. I've been pronouncing it wrong.
And I'm sure I've had Asahi in Japan. I'm sure that's how it sounded when I saw it there. But it is big in Japan. And when you think cyber attack, you think, that's not going to affect me. That's not really that big an issue. It's some corporate body that's going to be charged some money or some ransomware. I'm going to forget about it all and go to the pub and have a beer. And when you get there and there's the pub with no beer, the famous song, The Pub with No Beer, maybe they could do a modern version of The Pub with No Beer and say there's a cyber attack that's occurred, which is why there's a pub with no beer. But it's every level that this attack has occurred. So it's not just the production. So you might think we'll go and attack the factory that's producing beers. So you could do that, which they have done, but there's a stockpile somewhere. You assume that while they're producing beer, it's not
some excess somewhere, haven't they?
Yeah, sure. There'd be a warehouse, surely, because you don't want to be just in time. I know just in time manufacturing was really pioneered in Japan, but you don't want to have it so that you're producing the beer now and it's in someone's pub tomorrow. You want to have some stockpile, but they disrupted the actual logistics as well. So every stage of the process, so the production of the beer, the logistics of getting the beer out to the various pubs, the stages of actually getting the raw materials ordered in to come into the factory to be able to produce every bit of the process.
They'll be rioting in the streets.
Well, there probably is. Now, this all happened at the end of September, so when people are listening to this, hopefully it's all fixed and done now. But what's interesting in Japan is there has been a bit more activity attacking Japanese companies because Japanese companies don't like to lose face, that whole Japanese thing of saving face. And if you, as a Japanese company, admitted to the public that something happened, then suddenly you've lost face in the community. So they typically very quietly go away and they might pay the ransomware, they might pay the amount because they don't want people to know about it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Goodness
so
me.
now we know about this one, but essentially we've got now maybe some Japanese companies might say, well, we've got to take a different approach because we are being targeted now because of that. So again, in this one, 30 domestic breweries were attacked. So that's not just one brewery, that's not just one factory. 30 breweries were attacked in this whole process. So Japanese does have a cybercrime department, if you like. I'm not sure that's the right word for a department, but basically they've been working on this and trying to help Japanese companies. But when you go to the local pub and you can't get a beer, you know that cybersecurity is becoming a very big deal across the world.
That's it. Heads are going to roll for this.
Yeah, and so I think you'll see that cybersecurity will be crucial. I think quality control is big, obviously, in a brewery, and anything that's producing something we eat or drink. But I think cybersecurity will start to have a much greater focus in breweries, but in just Japanese companies in general.
Have you ever been dirty about missing out on a window seat on a flight? Are you one of those people, or do you prefer the aisle? My legs need the aisle. But airplane windows are so disappointingly small, and the view is so often just a sea of fluffy white cloud anyway. But nevertheless, there's a notable allure to having access to the view. Well, one new breed of aircraft is going to do away with windows altogether, but they've made an eye-catching trade-off, Matt.
They have, and I am intrigued by this. If I said to someone, why do we have windows on planes? I think people would probably say, well, we've always had windows on planes. And if you go back to the earliest planes, there were no windows because you're sitting in an open cockpit, so you could see around you.
Everything.
Then they enclosed that because that seemed to make more sense rather than being buffeted with winds of 1,000 kilometres an hour.
And that everyone didn't have to wear flying helmets and goggles.
And goggles, that's right, yeah. Here's your headphones and goggles for the next flight. So that kind of makes sense. But if you sit back and think about it, what do people do on a plane now? I don't look out a window. I normally get my computer out and do some work.
I need an aisle seat, but I still like to look out the window.
And see there's something happening out there. But for a lot of people, they would probably stick their head in a screen of some description, either watching a movie, playing a game, doing some work. Does it really matter? And nighttime flights, you look out into blackness. You don't see much out there. And I actually love it when you've got some of the planes now that have got cameras on the outside of the plane and you can tune your screen that's on the seat in front of you to either the camera that's in the tail fin, so you can actually see from above over the actual plane, or one in the front of the plane, which is always fascinating at takeoff when you're going down the runway. So you kind of get views on the outside. But there was I do remember seeing some design concept. There was some kids competing in a design concept, and they had to come up with a random idea that would make the world a better place. And the idea they came up with was take the windows out of planes. Everyone, it's a silly idea, but when people start to think about it,
I feel like you're in a cargo plane.
Maybe. How does the cargo feel about that? So it's not just because kids said in a competition we should do it, but engineers have said for some time, if you actually took away the windows, the physical windows from a plane, then you eliminate some structural weak spots, because you can imagine you've got a hole in a fuselage, so you've got to put something in that hole, being a window, and then typically you've got dual panes in there. You don't have access when you're sitting inside the plane to the outside window. You've got a bit of plastic on the inside that separates you from the outside. You don't want people tapping away on the actual window that goes to the outside world. But you've got to then somehow get that into the plane, and there's a structural weakness there. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that makes it difficult. And
I wonder how hard it is to get it perfectly flat on the outside as well.
That's right. And
you're going to get little currents going there that are going to cause drag.
Exactly right. So the logic here is that if you removed it, the engineers believe that if you could get a smoother outside, you reduce drag, you'd actually get a lighter plane because you don't have the same structural weak spots, so you can actually have a lighter airframe, and you could save fuel, but not just a bit. They believe there's probably savings in the vicinity of 60% reduction in fuel burn.
60%?
Now, that seemed like a lot to me.
That does seem like a lot, but hey, I love data when it's made up on the spot.
That's right. It'd sound better if it was 63.2% rather than 60.
It sound more believable.
But when you start to think about the weight reduction and the air, I think the airflow will be the big thing. And then you think, well, I want to see out the window. I want to see where we are.
I still want to see out. Yeah. And when you fly over Uluru, you want to be able to see that.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. Sometimes it's really nice to look out the window, yeah?
So the first that we've got in some planes that are being designed without windows have a huge panorama of the outside world on screens on the inside. I'm assuming the weight of those screens is less than the weight they've saved on the outside. But again, with LCD, LED screens now, you can have a very light screen. So you could just have small individual screens, but the first design they've gone for is a lovely big panorama. So you can see the outside world projected from cameras on the outside of the plane into the actual screen.
I love this
on the
idea.
inside.
I love this idea. You feel like you're in Wonder Woman's invisible jet.
That's right. Well, that's the next stage. But imagine that, because there would be no window seats because the panorama view would be up slightly higher than everyone's heads. So it wouldn't matter if you're sitting on the aisle or the window. You just look up and see, oh, look at that wonderful panorama around there. And then you can do that.
That just means there's going to be more competition for the aisle seats because that's the only one that really where you score points then. Stretch your legs out.
That's right, yeah. And the aisle's an interesting one. The aisle some people don't like because when people go to the toilet during the night, someone climb over them.
All right.
So there might be some competition around there. I still think just put beds on planes. Every seat is a bed. You get on the plane and you lay down. Even if it's a 1 hour flight, you just lay down, stack them up 3 or 4 high, like on a bunk bed. Wow, how exciting is that?
There you go.
But go back to the idea. And so then you could say for the first half hour, we're showing some images of the outside world. And then once we're up at 35,000 feet, well, you can see down there and see a little tiny dot that might be Uluru, but you don't care that much. So let's run our movies like you're at a maxi screen at the cinemas. So you've got this huge big panoramic screen. So there is a plane being built at the moment. It's a Otto Aerospace is making a plane. Now they do luxury jets. So this is only a fairly small jet at this stage, but they've got orders for 300 of this plane, of this model, without any windows, and they're delivering those by the year 2030. Now these are fairly small seating numbers, so they're customised basically. So it might have 10 or 20 seats in these, so they're designed a bit like a Learjet, I suppose, as a business type jet.
Yeah, right.
But it would look pretty weird, I think, sitting on the runway. You look over at a plane and you go, that looks a bit strange. That's a smaller plane with no windows on it. For those people a bit concerned that it might be like a Concorde with no vision out the front for the pilots, they aren't proposing to remove the screen, the outside window for the pilot. The pilot will still have actual visual view of the outside world. That's right. They'll see the real thing, not a projected image that comes in. But I do love the idea. But I love the idea that we also are saying, no, we don't have to say it's always been done that way. We can say, let's have a look at that. Let's think about that. Let's try something a bit different. Now, it might be a complete flop. No one might want to fly in these planes. They might go, this is terrible. I hate the idea of it. And they don't keep going. But I love the idea of the next step. Yeah. Which is a normal 200, 300 seat plane that's got no windows. And let's say people don't like it. Well, I wonder what the technology, where it will go from that, what they'll learn from that and where it'll go from there. Anyway, that's the story of technology though, isn't it? It is the story of technology. And it's a story of human acceptance of technology as well. So we might, as engineers, go, this is a great idea. This will be much better from a technical engineering perspective, which means diddly squat if it doesn't get accepted by the public. So if the public go, there's no way I'm flying airline ABC because they've got those windowless planes, that'll be part of the vote with your feet concept. But I'd be quite comfortable with it because I get on a plane, I look out the window, I don't care. In fact, I'm a bit the same as you. I don't want to sit in the aisle because of my legs. I like to sit in the aisle because it just seems more convenient if I do want to get up. And if someone climbs over me, I'm okay with that. And also, the aisle seats aren't as popular as the window seats. So let all those people that want window seats have those, and I might get a slightly better seat. I don't know what's better seat in a plane. They all get there at the same time. But yeah, I think it would change the view of flying without windows on the outside. Yeah, so, absolutely it will. We'll look forward to that one. Yeah. Now imagine if you could diagnose a disease even before you had the physical symptoms that arrived to wreck your day.
You'd have gratitude of all the infectable people that you could share a house with or an office with. Well, where farming livestock is concerned, the losses due to an outbreak are all too often devastating. The chance that that devastation for one dairy herd in California is much less now that they have all of their cattle wearing biometric collars. Now, Matt, an outbreak was prevented in that herd 48 hours before Clarabelle had any symptoms.
Quite fascinating, isn't it? And the symptoms did appear, but there already were some obviously almost invisible symptoms to us that anything was happening. But it's a step.
You can isolate that individual then and observe it and treat it.
Correct.
And,
and most importantly, as you said, treat it. One of the things that's fascinating is we talk a lot on this podcast about wearables, all the different things that happen with wearables.
Yeah.
But I don't think of wearables coming straight to mind for cows. I think of wearables for humans, but we're actually going there now with wearables for livestock, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, we've talked before, and this is a bit controversial, about the idea of collars being used on cows for virtual fencing. So when you've got these huge farms in Western Australia, rather than having a fence, a physical fence that you put up that then gets damaged and you only need one hole in the fence and the fence is pretty much useless, you have a virtual collar that actually uses electric shocks to keep cows within a certain area. Now, I'm not talking about that in this particular scenario, but we're getting better with our collars. So there's been a few steps along the process, and some early versions of these high-tech collars were like pedometers, and that was it. They got an idea of how many steps or how much motion that cow undertook in a particular day. So you got a bit of data about that, and then try to maybe encourage your cows to move around a little bit more. That's old school now. That's so yesterday. We've now got to the point where we've got collars, and they cost about $4.50, that's Australian dollars, per cow per month. So you've got to get some benefit for these collars, but you've got collars that are checking a whole range of things. So they, first of all, analyse rumination. They actually look at the chewing and digestion pattern in their four stomachs, cow's four stomachs, to detect sickness. So that's the first part. And then again, if you detect anything there, you can intervene, you can change the diet, you can adjust in terms of what the feed getting. They might need to add some probiotics or whatever it might be. And then you can still map with GPS what the cows are doing in any given day. Not pedometer, not something as basic as pedometer, but really accurate because you've got GPS capabilities on there. And then, of course, you can just manage a whole range of things on the cow and see what's actually happening with your herd overall. So you start to think, well, how is this going to help, and do I get my $4.50 back per month? Well, they talk about the difference. It doesn't sound like much, but in a milking herd, a good, healthy cow can produce 38.5 kilograms. That's 38.5 litres.
Litres, that sounds to me, although milk's got to be a little bit heavier than
maybe a little bit heavier than water.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a little bit less than 38.5 litres, but that seems like a fair lot from one cow. That's a fair bit. But even cows that you think are healthy, until you analyse them a bit deeper, might be down to 35, 34 kilograms. So you think, well, 4 kilograms of milk doesn't sound like much, but multiply that across your herd, multiply that across each day of the month, and suddenly that starts to add up to a lot of dollars. So that's where they're talking about there. Just by keeping their herd, all of it healthier, it can be 4 kilograms of milk per day per cow, which starts to add up to a few dollars.
Yeah, wow.
One farmer said that they saved about $1.5 million over a decade in just health costs alone for their cows. Now, again, depending on the size of the herd, $1.5 million sounds like a lot, but if you had a bazillion cows, it's probably not much per cow. If you had 2 cows, that's a lot. But the reality is farmers are talking about this as a modern way. And I've always said that farmers are very adaptable to technology. New technology comes out.
Early adopters.
Absolutely they are, because they can see the difference on the bottom line very quickly. It makes sense to invest that money because you're getting a return.
And there may be some sceptical farmers out there, but as soon as they see Farmer X who's adopted this technology driving his new truck into up his driveway or whatever, or through town, boom, people jump on board.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. And so you can have more cows, you can have a healthier herd, more cows, you can monitor what those cows are doing, monitor a whole range of things. And as we get to the stage where we've gotten cheaper chips, we're getting more advanced technology, we're using AI, and this uses AI definitely for all of this, then you are able to get better and better outcomes. You can fine-tune where cows go in terms of what feed they need based on the biometric data from their collars, so you can actually change the diet for these various cows. So the whole range of possibilities here, incredible. So, and farmers are getting better. We've had tractors, we've had self-steering tractors for a long time now. Autonomous tractors are getting there as well. We've got AI-driven apple pickers. We've got drone crop monitoring. So we do have a lot happening in overall management. But wearables, that's not something that I thought I would see on an ongoing basis.
It's happening. Well, I wonder if it'll enter into the pet industry as well, whether or not people will start to put these AI collars on their dogs and their cats so they can pick up on things that might be a little bit wrong and a cheaper trip to the vets than what might occur otherwise.
Well, exactly right. And the big driver here is that you can justify $4.50 per month per cow because you're making money out of it. But some people spend a lot of money on their pets. So $4.50 per month wouldn't sound like much if you could just monitor the health of your pet. It might even give you a warning and say, you haven't had your dog walked enough this month. Maybe take it for a few more walks. It's not being
That's
that
the
healthy.
last thing I want. No. Chase me out the door.
Not just the dog telling you. You've got some computer telling you something. So I actually think that we'll see cloud-connected collars becoming a bit of a standard on farms. So again, once you see some farmers adopt it and it's working, then you'll see all of this. And I think it'll really transform livestock care to intelligent, data-driven, rather than, gee, Mary, she's a great farmer. She's really intuitive in her farming. Well, we don't want Mary being intuitive with farming. We want data that drives decisions based on that information that we get back from it, and we're getting more and more like that.
Home security cameras are getting an AI upgrade. Now, for a while now, our security cameras have been able to discern between different moving entities, that's cars, animals, humans, etc. AI is now working at picking up the difference between friend, family, courier, and ne'er-do-wells. And Matt, that means we can start to prioritise those incessant alerts.
And those ne'er-do-wells, not a term that I hear much these days, the old ne'er-do-well. Who are you, sir? I'm a ne'er-do-well.
Vagrants loitering around your patio. Yeah.
So Amazon's got 10 new connected cameras, and these are connected cameras typically used for doorbells at the front of your house. So it's exploding. This whole market is absolutely exploding now, and we're getting much better at what we do. Now, the model for many companies these days is we don't want to sell a product. We want you paying us on a monthly basis. That's the really attractive model. So they add those features in for the monthly subscription, not just the purchase of the product. But we are getting 4K cameras. That's great. We've got sharper images, smarter alerts. And one of the things with those smarter alerts is now you don't just get an alert on your phone to say motion. Well, great. Now we're going to go back and look at that. Oh, it was just a cat walking past the camera in the front. And what happens then, of course, is you say, oh, it's another alert. I know it's just going to be a cat or a dog walking across the front. And so you start ignoring them.
It's the boy who cried wolf.
Exactly right. So you see enough of those alerts and you give up on them. But now they're getting better, and this is the upper end of the subscription models. You start to get two people appearing into a car at the front of your house is the message you get, rather than there was motion at the front of your house. So if you've got a camera facing out of the street, the motion sensors you'll get will be that specific. And it won't be someone out for a jog and runs past on the footpath across the front of your house, because the camera's smart enough to go, well, they came into the screen or into frame and they've left frame, end of story. Oh, they've come into frame and they've stopped and they've paused and they're looking into a window. I better alert the owner that something happened. This looks like a ne'er-do-well as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, you want alarms about the ne'er-do-wells. And maybe, you might have, someone who you're expecting to come and visit. And, you got to duck out or whatever. You just want to check in that these people are, if they arrive early, for example, you want to know where they are.
Well, this is the thing. AI can now distinguish from known visitors. So, there's James who comes in once a week. I'm okay with James. That's fine. Yeah, right. It can identify couriers. Oh, I've picked up on the uniform. This is a courier for ABC Express Company. Great, you've got a parcel that's just been delivered there. Okay, I'll go and get one of my neighbours to grab that because I'm not home at the moment, whatever it might be. And dogs and pets and essentially people that are different. So you're getting these natural language messages, and I love that idea as well, because you see so many alerts, and sometimes you'll leave something on in terms of alert mode, and then you look, I've got 40 messages, I'm sure they're just all irrelevant, or a spider's crawled across the front of the camera, and that starts to give me alerts as well, whereas if you were very specific in those. So we are getting so much better. The other feature that I love the idea of, which isn't in Australia yet, but the US has got that, is called Search Party. And what that does is lets you use all of your neighbours' cameras to find your dog or your cat.
Oh.
So you've lost your dog, you put out an alert and say, here's my dog, I've lost it, and it will then tap into every other camera around the neighbourhood that's the same brand, obviously, to say, it's actually just 10 doors down at the moment, it walked past there, it was last spotted there. It's a bit like the Find My network from Apple, where it's using all of the iPhones and all the iPads out there to find a particular AirTag. This is using all of the Amazon cameras out there to find a particular pet. And then you go, what if it can do that with a pet? Maybe some privacy issues here, but could do that with a child of mine. I've lost my son. He went for a wander this afternoon and I haven't found him. A bit more of a panic, obviously, and you'll be running around trying to find them. But imagine using all of those cameras around the neighbourhood to try and find where your son last was.
My grandfather was a wanderer for a while as well when he started to slip into dementia. And so, that would have been a very handy tool back in those days.
I hadn't thought of that. That's even better, isn't it? Because you do have some people where they're getting to their later stage of life and they do start to wander and people do get worried and there's different things they might put in place to try and find them. But imagine doing that. Now, just to make it clear, the Search Party feature does not cater to humans at this stage. I think they have to get through a few steps from a privacy perspective to prove that they weren't capturing the data about where people are wandering on a normal basis. But when you go into Search Party mode, and maybe that's their big picture plan, they're starting off with animals and they know that the next stage after animals will be, the technology works, we can identify an animal, we can identify a person. So we're getting more and more of these cameras out the front. It's just getting easier for police now. Police shows in the future will just tap into all of those cameras out there. We've got all the traffic cameras. We've got so many cameras everywhere. Just tap in and we'll know exactly what happened in that crime.
So those hour-long police shows are going to turn out to be just 10 or 15 minutes long.
They can solve 20 crimes in that 1 hour. Because I don't know, when I see a police show, before we had DNA and cameras, how did they solve a crime? It would have been asking questions. Are you telling the truth? I mean, old-fashioned detective skills compared to now, they just look at the cameras and, those cameras are crystal clear in the vision when I see those TV shows. They're always better. And it was
the butler. The butler did it,
definitely. Well, that's easy. Why do they worry about investigating? Just anyone, your name's Butler, that'll do us.
Keeping up with the Joneses is a very tricky business. Perhaps you can have the upper hand, though, with a cleaner floor at least, with the new Deebot RoboVac. Matt, what does the Deebot do that the Joneses will get envious about?
The Deebot does some cool things, and you know it's good because one of the units they had previously was the X8, and they sold about 1.5 million units of the X8. Well, this has gone all the way to X11. So
they've jumped to 9 and 10, have they?
They did have a 9 and 10, but we know now that the 11 has got to be three versions better. There's going to be a bit
of Spinal Tap where you turn it up to 11. And
I did think of that as well. When I saw 11, I went, maybe. So the
Deebot 11.
The Deebot 11 we're up to now. So the numbers are going well. If I was launching a new product today, I'd just launch it at now number 29 because you go, wow, it's 28 versions and now this one, it must be good.
That's what they did with Nescafe Blend 43, didn't they? They just went straight to the 43.
That's right. Wow, it's better than those first 42, isn't it? So this is podcast 75 we're doing. So the Deebot X11 is getting better. These various robotic vacuum cleaners are getting better all the time. And we've joked about them in the past about running over poo on the carpet and then spreading it around, those sort of things. They're getting so much better. But one of the issues, James, is just you've got to empty it out after it's done its job. So surely can't someone else do that? Can't someone take care of that? So one of the things that I find incredibly attractive about this is that it's got a 1.6 litre dustbin or 1.6 litre base station. So when it's done its work, cleaning up, it comes back over, empties itself out. The estimation for the normal household is that you'll get up to about 48 days, very specific I know. So I would say a month and a half before I've got to empty out the actual base station. So that's getting better. Now, maybe 5 to 10 times a year, I've got to empty out the base station. It's
Yeah,
getting
but I reckon
better.
that makes it harder because it's less of a routine.
Maybe.
You just, we've gone 49 days. Oh, we can go another
It'll
10.
be right. That's right.
Maybe 15 or 20.
And then it flows over the top, and then you've got to really do something
This thing
about it.
can't dock itself because there's so much filth coming out of it. Yeah, right.
Just falling over. It's a bit like the Homer Simpson concept. If you can fit it on top, you don't have to empty it out yet. So it's got some pretty good technology. It's got gallium nitride in terms of its charging system. So it can do burst charging, which adds 6% of power in 3 minutes. Now, I find that fascinating. We often talk about how quick it is to get to 80%, how good it might be when you charge up for a short period of time to add another 20 or 30%. We're down now to 6% of power in 3 minutes, and that's a part of that whole burst technology. The idea here is that you want continuous cleaning. It talks about continuous cleaning for a home that's 1,000 square metres in size, which is a pretty big home.
That's a decent sized house, yeah.
So it can continually charge, vacuum, and keep working. But of course, we don't want just vacuuming. We want mopping as well. So this does mopping and vacuuming.
Wow.
Now, when they talk about the size of it, 100-watt fan, 6,400 milliamp hour battery, 19,500 pascals of suction. And I do like that they've actually used proper SI units, not just random things that we might compare
How many
to that.
swimming pools is that? No.
Well, that's
Sorry.
right.
That's right.
18 litres per second of airflow. So it's actually a very powerful unit. 4-wheel drive design. Now, I like that as well.
I like this idea because I always wondered, like mats and stuff like that. You know,
Yep.
some of those mats, rugs you can get, have got a bit of a thick pile on it.
So the thing I like about that, the 4-wheel drive design allows it to climb obstacles up to 4 centimetres in size.
Yeah, 4 centimetres is a decent climb.
That's right.
That's a small step.
And it can do that in steps of 2.4 centimetres maximum. So if you just had a 4 centimetre step, it wouldn't handle it.
Oh, okay.
But if you had a 4 centimetre rise over a little bit of distance or a 2.4 centimetre straight step, it would do that. Now, we've talked before about a robotic vacuum cleaner that means to escape the front door of its house and ended up on the road. And I thought, well, normally that wouldn't be the case.
Vacuuming the street.
That's right, because normally it would bump up against the actual step. But now, 2.4 centimetre step, or 4 centimetres in total, that's going to start to climb and get away from some places. But it has got some pretty clever AI where it will actually get there to the point where it will map out a house and work out what things happen, the amount of movements you have in the house, when the best time to vacuum is, a whole range of really clever things. Now, that's all great. The price still said to me that maybe this isn't going to go completely to mainstream straight away because it's $3,000, 3,000 Aussie dollars. So it's got a fair price tag.
For a vacuum cleaner.
And, you know, how many of those do I need before I just get my Rosie the robot to do the vacuuming with an old-fashioned vacuum cleaner? Because do I want to spend my $3,000 on that, or do I want to save up and spend my $20,000 on my robotic person who will do the vacuuming for me and cook my breakfast?
And hopefully fold your washing as well.
And fold my washing. That's exactly right, the ultimate idea. So it'll do carpeted rooms, it'll adjust for carpet or hard floors, it'll do mopping, it'll clean out the actual water back into the base station, so you can fill up the base station with clean water and it'll empty that out and then take some more clean water. Like, this is, we're getting there, James. We're getting there with robotic vacuum cleaners. I think this is good. And they've obviously got a bit of a track record with the 1.5 million units they sold of the X8. They've obviously got some runs on the board and some people out there who want to upgrade from the 8 to the 11 because the 11 is a bigger number, obviously, than an 8. So, so that's important. So, look, I think it's good, but I think we're going to see more AI-driven self-maintained cleaning robots. That's the big thing here. And they will become...
That's a big deal.
They will become standard in homes. I think we're going to get more and more of these. And there's not the retrofitting. I love when you've got some technology, you have to go back and start again. Oh, when I build my next home, I'll be able to incorporate that. You don't need that. You just put this dustbin to the side, plug it in and say, off you go. Minimal installation work, which is good as well.
Bring it on. It's an exhausting effort just to keep up now with that AI setting the pace for itself. AI engines that aren't promoting their own improvements every few months risk being left for dead. So, Matt, how is Google Gemini keeping itself in front of the peloton?
I do love the idea of this because we've seen with photo editing apps for a little while now on our mobile phones. We take a photo, we've got lovely people in the photo, and then you go, oh, what's that in the background? Who's that random person over there? Nothing to do with these people over here. Let's remove them. So we pull out our phone and we rub that person out, and not only replaces that person, but it replaces it pretty much with the background that it should be there. And I've looked at that a few times and I've played with it just to look at it and go, wow, that's impressive. It's looked at the scenery and gone, yep, that's a bit of tree over there and a bit of a house over there, and I'll just build onto that. And you can see where it gets it wrong sometimes, where you go, oh, yeah, I can see why it might have continued on with that there. But it's not just a simple case of whatever, there's a red fence, I'll continue on with the red fence. It looks at the whole image and then replaces that with that person. And sometimes you'll take a person out and you go, I can't see where that person was. It's done a really clever job.
Do you know, it was amazing. I recently had a photo taken with my wife and my son, and we were all in the foreground. It was like, and it was an up-close shot, so there was a lot of us. And my wife tried to change the background, just change the background a little bit, and she ended up deleting us all. But what it did with the background, because we were taking up so much, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, why would you take a picture of that blank wall?
So you left the
but all the detail that was in it made up the detail in the blank wall as well.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what it does. It looks around the surrounding area and says, I know what's in there, or I can work it out. So that's been there for a little while now, but now Gemini 2.5 flash image allows you to do a lot more than that, and more importantly, allows you to do it with natural language. So we've got a lovely picture there. We think it's fantastic, and we think, gee, that wonderful outback landscape scene would look better with a couple of cows in the background. Cows with collars, obviously, with high-tech collars on them. So let's put a couple of cows in. So rather than try and go and get a picture of a cow with a transparent background and put it in and try and get it so the shadow look quite right and get it there and it looks like a bit of a fail. We've seen some famous fails across the world where people have tried to add some things in the background and then the shadow or the ratio or something's completely wrong. You would simply say to Gemini, add 2 cows grazing on the grass in the background. You'd use natural language and then, bam, appear a cow or 2 cows, whatever you ask for, in the background. And hopefully, with all those things that we might miss as a human, getting things right with the proportions, with the actual shadow, with the way it's oriented, all those sort of things, all taken care of. Then we see a picture and we go, gee, that photo looks great, but that red jumper, what were you thinking when you were wearing that red jumper, James? It just spoils the whole picture. What about that favourite blue jumper of yours? Sure, please change my red jumper to a blue jumper. Yeah. And bam, the red jumper changes to a blue jumper. So natural language to edit your images. Now, I know some people who are very good with Photoshop, very good at editing images, changing images, fixing images mainly. And you start to say, so what's their job in the future? When you can start to take natural language and change images just with that, then that's pretty impressive. You can
They're going to join all the Coopers, the old barrel makers and the blacksmiths and the farriers and stuff that of days gone by.
What's your job? Well, in the past, I was a Photoshop editor. What's that, sir? What was that job involving? So you can also merge photos. So, for example, you can take a photo of a couple of people that are in one area and another couple of people and you go, I would have loved to have those in a photo together, but we were there on a different day. Well, Gemini, please take the photo here, the photo there, merge those, and you've got the background already because you're taking in front of the same scene. Merge those as if we were all there on the same day. Now, the old saying used to be, believe half of what you see and nothing of what you read. I think was one of the expressions in the past. But now, how can we believe anything
Can't
that we
believe
see?
anything you see at all, unfortunately. And I wonder, gone are the days where you'd look at a photo and then you'd try and piece together, when was that we did that? And the answer is that photo was a combination of many photos that occurred over a long time.
I don't remember being there with Billy. Where was Billy? No, we were there on different days, but we just thought that was
gaslighting.
Good.
This is
here's the proof
so
you were
get
there.
an argument around the Christmas table and say, no, remember when we went on that holiday and and then someone is going to, one of my siblings is going to go, yeah, well, I got photographic proof that this is how it occurred and here's a photograph.
And you're going to go,
don't you remember this photograph?
That's right, I can't argue with that. So it is a bit scary, isn't it? But it's just the whole battleground, I think, with AI. We've seen that battleground where ChatGPT's jumped ahead. Yep. They've jumped ahead mainly with their generative AI. They do some images, but their images aren't great. And my greatest frustration, I was doing some work with someone the other day, creating some images, and I said, so watch this, and they created an image. I said, so see that little mistake that's there? Let's get that fixed up. And you'd say to ChatGPT to fix it up, and it would do the image again in a different way with the same mistake. And so it was just, I just don't know. The images are great with ChatGPT, but Gemini has obviously seen an opening there and went, we've lost a bit of ground to chat on generative AI.
Yeah.
Maybe we should make it up on our images, and they've obviously decided to focus on
But this
images.
is the point. For these AI engines is that they have to keep constantly improving upon themselves on a monthly basis. In order to stay current, in order to stay the choice, the AI of choice, the competition's so great out there.
It is, and this might start to really redefine digital creativity. We've talked about vibe coding. I've got these great ideas for a program, but I don't know how to code. Well, you can use vibe coding. This might be the same sort of thing. Oh, I've got these great ideas in my mind for what a scene, an image might look like, but I can't use those complicated programs. Well, don't worry about it anymore. You can start to basically just use your creativity and use natural language to create these images that you want. So it's getting better all the time.
And nothing will be real anymore.
That's exactly it.
Apple AirPods have taken an idea from the pages of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and made it a real thing. Real-time translation is no longer science fiction, and travellers the world over have much to thank Douglas Adams for. Matt, Travellers' phrasebooks are officially redundant. AirPod translators are here to stay.
They are, and I think it is a fascinating space we're moving into. I have talked before about the idea that this might be great in a nail studio where maybe people speak a different language on a regular basis here in Australia. So you can sit there with your AirPods on and listen to what they're saying about you and having a bit of a laugh. And there's a great Seinfeld episode where exactly that happens, where Elaine brings George's dad into the studio to listen to what's being said, but Elaine gets banned because they're onto her.
Yep, it's going to have some real
You've got to be
shortfall.
careful. But this is a bit of a question, I think, in international tourism. Part of the interest, I think, in tourism is you maybe learn a few words in a foreign language. You get to say hello
Immersing
and
yourself in
goodbye.
the culture, yeah.
Exactly
Yep.
right. So
Bit of
you
counting.
dive into that, and depending how long you might be staying there for, you do learn a bit of that language, and you do try and find out ways to say things. And they might be doing the same in the opposite direction, so they're learning a bit of the English that you might speak, just a few basic words. But do we just get to the point where all of that now is unnecessary? And I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know where it's going to end up. But one thing I think it will do is improve tourism. There was a poll this year actually that said that over a third of Americans choose destinations where they can speak English. So that limits the world in terms of tourism. You start to think, well, if you start to put your AirPods in, does that then suddenly open up a world of tourism to foreign-speaking languages? And so that might be great for countries around the world because the tourism market in America has been a bit limited. I think Americans tend to visit American places first, then English-speaking places second, and then nowhere third.
Yeah.
But maybe they might start to go, maybe we should go to some of these other places that speak
Open up
languages.
some horizons.
It might do. So I think that's quite fascinating. I also think it's fascinating where this goes. I would love, in some respects, just to have a universal language across the world. But how would you decide on that? We might say arrogantly it should be English. The French might say it should be French. But again, some of that interesting culture is that we've got different languages. Why did that group of people living on that piece of dirt speak in that way, and this group of people over here spoke in that different way?
Well, the thing I love is that in different languages there are some words for things that you've only got phrases or descriptions, like something that might take a paragraph to describe in English takes one word in German, and they've got a word for it in German. You know, and I love that.
Yeah, that's right. Schadenfreude is one of my favourite words. Like that's a very complicated concept, but in German it's just Schadenfreude, and we go, yep, that makes sense. I get that. But even we were recently out in a place called Brewery, out in central New South Wales. Now they lay claim to have the oldest man-made structure in the world. And they've got a structure that's in their river that's a fish trap. So it's a particular arrangement of rocks that would allow fish to be easily captured. Effectively, it was the easiest fishing in the world. You would basically have fish go through these rocks a certain way, get trapped, and then the Aboriginals of the day would come along and pick up those fish and go, gee, how easy was that? And that would be their food place. But when they built those fish traps, the story goes from local Aboriginals that there were 8 tribes that would come and use those fish traps because there was more than enough fish for everyone there. And those 8 tribes spoke 8 different languages.
Yeah.
Now, they're all in close proximity. They're all living around this particular river. That was their food source. Not a lot of transport 30,000 years ago to go and travel a long way away, but they still spoke 8 different languages. So even though we'd love to have one language, you don't have to go very far apart. and you've got different languages spoken.
There's something like 1,000 different languages or dialects in Indonesia, I think. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's just, I probably made that number up. My apologies.
I've never really looked at how many languages there are, even worldwide. But you get kids who speak pidgin English. You get kids who make up languages to have their own private communication tool. So I don't know we're ever going to narrow that down. I think the AirPods Pro 3 is really going to just change the way we do things from a tourism perspective, but maybe from a language perspective as well. Maybe we just get to the stage where we don't care what language people are speaking. We just sit there and put our Babel fish in our ears effectively and away we go. So it's a really interesting space, and it's really interesting from a cultural perspective. Will this be the death of language, or will this be the saviour of some languages? We look back in 2 decades' time and see that this might be a defining moment in worldwide cultural understanding. Imagine sitting at UN General Assembly, and without all the people sitting around with their translators and getting their little headphones in, everyone just wears their AirPods Pro 3 and has a natural conversation. It's fascinating.
Certainly, it reduces the chances of hijinks and leading people astray. You talked about how people have interpreted it. You've gone overseas and you've had an interpreter saying something or translating something that you've been saying. And you put a lot more effort into saying that than they actually put into translating. It was much shorter what they.
That's right. What did they really say? And
look, paraphrasing. I think it's really important, the things I've got to say.
That's right. So, and AI could do that as well, but you'd probably say that AI wouldn't have specific motivations. It might get it wrong, but it may not have specific motivations about doing that, whereas a human might be, this is boring, let's get it over and done with quicker. So
there's another thing I've just remembered. There's a Monty Python skit where there's an irresponsible phrase book created for translating, and this Hungarian guy walks into this shop to go and buy himself a sandwich or something, I don't know, and he starts complimenting the guy behind the counter. You have beautiful thighs. He's just trying to point to this thing on the shelf. You have beautiful thighs. Anyway, I think, Well, let's see what happens when AirPod 3 comes out.
Well, it's there now.
Oh, it's there now, sorry, my apologies.
People can use it now, but I should see some stories, and I'm sure there'll be some stories where you do have someone saying you've got beautiful thighs, and they slap them across the face, and what happened there, and the AirPods Pro 3 is responsible for it. So it might be the comeback of that Monty Python skit.
Might be a hacker's delight.
It might be a hacker's delight too. Imagine the fun you could have then at a UN General Assembly. Imagine that.
Fantastic.
World War
Start
17.
Spam calls are a pain in the bum, and life would be better without them. And I reckon smartphones that can do the screening for you are worth the money that you pay for them. Now, Matt, are the good guys winning on the war on spam?
Winning, that's a big statement, whether they're winning or not, a big question. I don't know they're winning.
The fight continues.
I don't know they've won.
They have won some battles.
That's right, exactly right. And I had this, it was fascinating. I was talking to my daughter recently, and one of her jobs at university, she's got a mentoring role where she rings students. She's allocated certain students that might have been just struggling a little bit in their first year of university, so her job is to ring them and just check up on them and see how they're going. Of course, it comes from a random phone number from the university, and so sometimes people don't take the call, sometimes people go, I don't know that number, they call screen it. But she rang one the other day, and she got this exact scenario where she had an announcement from that person's phone that said, "Hi, this is Billy Blogg's phone. I'm just checking who you are. Can you please state your name and the reason for your call?" And then that person will decide whether or not they take the call. So she stated her name and the purpose, and the person didn't take the call. So but at least they didn't just hang up immediately. At least they knew what it was. And so this is the latest idea. You can turn this feature on. If someone makes a phone call and it's not a number in your address book, so a random number or a new number, then you do get that announcement where it says, if you want to talk to this person, you need to tell me who you are and why. And me, as the receiver of that call, sees a message come up, this is real time, on my phone to say, it's James calling, and he's saying, we're talking about the time for the next tech talk. Okay, great. James is obviously ringing from a different phone number than I normally have. Take the call. Take the call. If I go, this is James ringing and I'm trying to scam you for all your money, then I don't take the call. So essentially, it's a way of just putting one extra barrier between the scammers and the human at the end of the line. Now, of course, the scammer could say, this is Mary talking about the fact that you have a breach at your bank account, so you need to take the call because it's a really important issue. And you'd go, oh, I better take that call because it could be the bank ringing to tell me that something has happened. Of course, scammers will get onto that in a level, but I think a lot of scammers would go, you know what, this person's one step ahead of me. I'll just go on to the next caller, next person I'm trying to call, next person I'm
they've
trying
got
to
to
scam.
be enough easy fish to catch that if you give them a little bit of curry, they won't.
That's right. And so you're getting this feature on Android. You've had something similar on Android in the past, but the new iOS from Apple, iOS 26, has got this feature as well. And I actually haven't turned it on yet, but I am keen to try it out to just see and just almost get someone to block their number and ring me and just see how the experience is from their point of view, how the experience is from my point of view, and how quick it all happens. Because you don't want to leave the person, okay, this person's got 5 minutes to decide whether to take your call or not. You don't want to leave them hanging on that long, but it might be just a way of just having that extra step there. So we've got to keep combating them. We've got to keep coming up with ideas. Their robot call that might be made at the other end might just have a very clever script line that comes up with that always gets people to take the call, because if someone rang and said, this is the police calling about your child, you might go, well, I'll take that call regardless because this could be an important call, something might happen to my child. So maybe they'll be a bit devious in the way they come up with something. But again, it's just that extra step, making it one step harder for them.
Yeah, and as I say, if there's an easier way to do things, they'll find it, and that's one less step that they'll have to worry about.
Yeah.
But,
And I find myself, when I get a call from a number that is a scam, they just added into my call, in my contact list, scam call number 28, scam call number 29. So you're blocking those. But of course, they spoof numbers. They use different numbers, all sorts of things there. So they constantly come up with different ideas on ways to combat it, and we just have to keep coming with ideas on how to stop the problem on the other side.
Shark attacks on Australian beaches are a rarity, though you may be forgiven for thinking otherwise if you follow the news. Now, we register about 20 shark attacks nationwide each year, with only 2 or 3 being fatal here in Australia. Consider the number of awesome beaches in this country and the number of beach goers each day and the number of awesome beach days each year, and I reckon your odds are pretty good. 20 out of a million bajillion are pretty good odds. Regardless, a group of scientists from Flinders University have been working at producing wetsuits that'll save lives in the event of an attack. How's that going for them, Matt?
Just give me those stats again. One in...
it's 20 out of a million bajillion.
Right, good.
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand
Every
those.
summer, a million bajillion people get to the beach.
Good.
And only 20.
I want to check on those, make sure I had it right. So you are right. For some reason, they really register in our consciousness, don't they?
Oh, it's just since Jaws came out in 1975, I think.
You're blaming entirely on Jaws, are you?
Yes. Thank you, Steve
In a word,
Spielberg.
yes. But we lose several thousand people a year in car accidents. We all get in a car, not all, but many of us get in a car every single day without thinking, oh no, I saw those stats, they were terrible. But the beach, not going out to the beach. I'm not surfing anymore because there's all those shark attacks.
Well, there's an element of horror to it. This thing that you cannot control, and it's big and it's nasty. It's got sharp teeth, and and they all want to eat you all the time.
That's right. That's obviously it. That's their number one objective. They're having a meeting right now. James and Matthew don't live on the coast. How are we going to get them to the coast and eat them?
I'll wet my toes at the Avoca Beach, maybe in the Central Coast there, and I'll go for a proper swim and whatnot. But I am still thinking in my mind, out there,
as illogical as it might be,
there's dun-duns, and they're coming for me.
Bajillion.
But I'm still happy to roll the dice and do it regardless.
So I'm talking about this story just for you, apart from your Avoca Beach experience, because I know you love material science. And this is a great example of material science. Now, we've seen divers in the past using almost like a chainmail suit to go diving amongst the sharks, and famous photographers have been doing that for many years, but you've got a fair bit of weight in that, and when you're diving, you normally have a weight that you put on yourself to stop you floating to the surface all the time, so having a heavy wetsuit type material that's made of chainmail is probably okay, because that's fine. But if you're out surfing, I don't know if I want to strap on a 30 kilo or 20 kilo chainmail suit to go out there surfing.
It's going to cramp your style.
A bit, yeah. I'm not going to be able to hang down like I used to, but I'm also worried that when I fall off, I'm not going to be able to swim.
To the bottom. Boom, yes.
I didn't get eaten by a shark, but I'm here on the bottom of the ocean drowning, so not so good. So what they've been doing is trying to work out some different materials that are able to withstand a shark attack but not then weigh us down. And so what a great experiment or what a great concept for people developing some material science.
Well, there was an interesting thing that happened, it would be at least 10 years ago, where people were weaving spider silk. And that's really, really, really strong.
Right.
They made a T-shirt out of it that could stop a bullet.
Wow.
Mind you, the bullet would still enter your body, but it'd just take the T-shirt with it, and you could just pop it out by just stretching the T-shirt. I mean, yeah. So I'm interested to hear how this goes.
So what they've been working on, and this is all supported by the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. So they've obviously seen that there's enough for them to be interested in to say, let's work out better ways to protect humans from sharks, obviously promote tourism, get more people out in the ocean, I assume. And the fascinating part here is that there are some things that happen when you get bitten by a shark. One is that you might lose a limb. Okay, that's pretty drastic. That's a pretty effective shark bite. And then you're struggling a bit to swim back to shore with a limb missing, or you might be just
an enormous amount of blood loss.
Enormous, that's right. So you bleed out, you can't get back to shore, that's it. It's probably pretty rare for a shark to do what Jaws might do and take you holeless bowless and say, thanks very much, I'm having James for lunch for the next month. I'll just take him to my den.
Eating half the boat you're on as well.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll take all of that person and chew away on them, and that's all fine. So that's
and come back
rare.
for 3 sequels with a grudge. Yeah,
that's right. You already had a nice lunch. Shouldn't that make you do? So that's the first part, is that normally it's a bite, or a loss of a limb is fairly rare. The most common thing with a shark bite is literally a shark bite. So it bites you, punctures your skin, at a big enough puncture that you start to bleed out.
Yeah.
Get back to shore, try and stem the flow, basically get some help, and away you go. You might be okay. The other part that happens is the crushing power of the incredible strength of the jaw.
This is the thing that interests me, because I wonder how you can stop that or minimise that.
So, not so much. So the focus has been on the blood loss. So they talk about looking at the testing, looking at injury categories: superficial wounds, external wounds, some moderate wounds in terms of the blood flow there, substantial and critical levels of those wounds. And so the first thing they looked at was making these fabrics bite resistant. So just doing that alone in the testing they were doing, and they were obviously having some fun testing because they took
biting each other in the lab. Come here, Matthew. I just want to see what this tastes like.
So they were taking some foam pieces that were shaped like a leg, like human body parts, and then they were actually taking that out into the water amongst some great white and tiger sharks and basically asking them to have a nibble on this. I assume they put something that smelled attractive on that, dangled that in the water, and while the shark came along and had a nice big crunch on it. And so what they were measuring there was how much damage was done externally to the actual foam insert, the thing that was like a leg, and how much pressure was applied. And then by looking at all that, they can say, well, great, this particular material could withstand this sort of crushing power and protect the inside of the leg, or not so much protect the inside, but at least stop the external blood flow. But you could have internal blood flow as well. You could actually crush muscles and vessels
the bruising
inside.
that you get inside is ruptured blood vessels.
Correct.
Yeah.
But at least in that scenario, you're probably not bleeding out as such. You might be bleeding internally, but that bleeding internally has got less, or you've got more time to get back to shore and get some help, rather than say, well, I've lost all my blood out in the ocean. You might be losing blood internally. Yeah. So they tested it for those things. They had 4 different materials they were testing. They gave them sexy names: Aqua Armor, Shark Stop, Action TX-S, didn't like the name of that one, and Brewster material. So based on those, there's some people doing some serious work because they've come up with serious names on them. And then they've gone through and looked at all these different things. Now, the other part that was important was you want to make sure that what you're creating is not too heavy. So one of the things that was made of, one of the materials was made of an ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, similar to what's used in sailing ropes. So very strong, very much able to resist in terms of sailing, that pressure on it, that, taking severe weight, if you like, pulling on that, and then wrapping that around the neoprene to try and stop shark teeth getting through it. So that was the type of thing they were working on, is getting the stage where they could use the strength, the physical strength of that to stop teeth getting through without protecting it. The final conclusion from their earliest testing was that essentially we think we can stop external blood flow. We're not going to do much about crushing. And if that shark's good enough to rip off your leg, it's going to rip off your leg regardless. So going along on a surfboard with your leg dangling there as a target, you might still lose your foot. So bad luck. But if you just have a bite, a bit of a munch on that, And I think sharks sometimes do that as a bit of a tester. They come and, what's this here in the water? Crunch. No blood came out. I'll move on to something else. Oh, lots of blood came out. That looks more attractive. So that might be protective in that, but it also might give you a false sense of security. You might go, hey, I can see those fins out there. Who cares?
I'm going in amongst it.
I've just had a big hamburger for lunch and I've spilled it all down the front of my wetsuit. It doesn't matter because I've got a shark-proof suit on there. I'm going to go out there and see how we go. So I think bike-resistant wetsuits, and they'd never be able to call them shark-proof because they'd get sued when someone got eaten by a shark. Bike-resistant wetsuits, I think, will protect probably divers. I think if I was, surfers. If I was a diver, I'd probably still go for something stronger. But I think they can protect surfers and probably marine workers more. But I just don't know that we can say we're right now, let's go out in the water and we're never going to have a problem.
Well, yeah, never's the word, isn't it? But I still think your odds are pretty good if you go out there for a surf or a swim today.
Yeah, probably. And these wetsuits will be available in the market within 2 years' time. So Avoca Beach in 2 years' time, just hold out for James because he's there.
See, I'll take my chances, provided it's not a gory death. Like if I've been gummed. I'm okay with that.
So can you have a chat to the sharks if you're going to do it?
If I'm not missing half my side, I'm okay with that.
Good. I'm sure they'll keep that in mind for you.
And that's all we have for for you today, ladies and gentlemen. As the sun sets on another episode, all that remains are the happy memories and a digital record in the cloud that can be replayed at any time in the future. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
No, my pleasure. I'm going out to look at my neighbours' doorbells to see what's happening there. No, I'm not hacking into them, okay? I'm just joking.
Just stare into people's cameras, just see what they've got there.
maybe that's a better trick.
And thank you, one and all, for joining us for another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. 9 stories each week of the latest news from the future and an excellent way to stay one step ahead of the pack. I'm your host, James Eddy, bidding you good health and prosperity for 1 week to come. That's all, just 7 days worth. If you want more, you'll have to tune in again next week and I'll give you a top up then. All the best and take care, and we'll see you soon.